From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Jim Gaudet. It's Idaho Matters. Freeing the slaves in America was not done with the stroke of a pen. President Abraham Lincoln and other anti-slavery politicians of the time, they used the Constitution, which did not condemn slavery, in a very deliberate and a very strategic way to make their arguments. College of Southern Idaho professor Justin Vipperman will be exploring this topic Saturday at the Idaho State Archives in Boise. He's joining us now for a quick preview, along with Angie Davis from the archives. Welcome, both of you, to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being here with you, Samantha.
Justin, I know this is a big topic. Give us a snapshot of what you're going to be talking about on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Lincoln is such an amazing figure in history. And so being able to look, and I think most people do, but I think being able to look at the ways in which he used the Constitution in order to push his anti-slavery ideas and his thoughts, I think are something that we all should be looking forward to. And I think on Saturday, we're going to spend a lot of time in looking at really his three-pronged approach, the things that he felt were important, but also bound by the Constitution. And I like this idea that he felt that the only way that he could stop slavery from progressing was by following the Constitution, which I think we all look at President Lincoln, as a constitutionalist anyway. So it makes sense if you think about it in those terms.
Well, and I know you're going to talk about how it was a process. It wasn't. We hear a lot about executive orders and presidents, stroke of a pen to make change. But Lincoln didn't do that, right? This was a process and a whole strategy.
Right. It was a strategy. I mean, really, as far back as 1854, he started working on what he believed would move really slavery out of the territories. That was his hope, is if he could stop slavery from even entering the territories, that's how we would stop slavery altogether. However, he saw that states had rights to keep slavery if that was their intention. And so this process starts really back in 1854, and he marches forward using the Constitution, arguing for what does persons mean in the Constitution, and what is this fugitive slave clause and this Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, and how do we make this work? And then ultimately landing with this idea that abolishing slavery in the territories is a federal prerogative, rather than the federal government can't go into states to push them to abolish slavery. And so it is a process over a long period of time that he's working on, trying to make sure that slavery isn't moving west, which I think is fascinating.
It is. And as you said, Lincoln is fascinating. And Angie, you've got a permanent Lincoln exhibit. Is that right? What's in it?
Yes, that's correct. The Abraham Lincoln Legacy in Idaho exhibit was established in 2012. Private donor David Leroy, Lincoln scholar and avid collector, he wanted to establish the legacy that Lincoln had in establishing Idaho as a territory in 1863, which is in the middle of the outbreak of the Civil War. And one of the things that I talk about with the thousands of patrons that come to visit every year is the strategic appointments that Lincoln was able to establish in the executive branch. And by establishing the territory, he was able to ensure that those appointees were going to be loyal to the Union.
And I know that you're going to have a guided tour of the exhibit as part of Justin's talk. And I heard, and tell me if this is true, there will be some never-before-seen Lincoln artifacts on display?
Yeah, that's correct. Every November, we celebrate the Gettysburg Address here at the Archives, and David Leroy brings down a selection of artifacts that he's collected, and this year is the portrait of Lincoln. So we have a number of portraits, engravings in numismatics. There's a greenback from the Idaho First National Bank, I believe, which is just wonderful. So yeah, there's a small case, and that'll be here for the entire month of November.
Justin, why is it important to talk about this, to remember and find out how this happened the way it did, especially, these days?
Yeah, I think that the way in which we look at the Constitution today, and really, I think, Samantha, you brought it up earlier, the executive orders, the stroke of a pen, this idea of like the president being above the Constitution, which I don't think that any of us believe that that's where the president is, but really this idea that Lincoln was looking at it and felt that he was bound by the Constitution, was trying to find ways that he could work within the Constitution, and I think that that's really important. But even to go further than that, this idea of abolishing slavery in the territories, that's us, that's Idaho. And being from Idaho, a fifth generation Idahoan myself, I think it's really important to tell that story about Lincoln doing this thing that solidifies the Idaho as a slave-free state. I mean, that is something that should be important to all of us, and to be able to look forward as we move into statehood from being the Idaho Territory.
I love it. Okay, so Justin, when people come, what are you hoping they take away? I think you did pretty good right there, telling us what to take away. But what are you hoping that the folks will come and find out more about?
Like, I really think that Lincoln is a nuanced figure, and I love that. I tell my students that here at the College of Southern Idaho, Lincoln is a nuanced figure, and I hope that we see him as that the complexity, that we can see him in his entirety and be able to understand who Lincoln was a little bit better. Because I think that we flippantly use Lincoln or Washington, Jefferson, we throw these names around like we know them. And usually, in a general sense, we're using just pieces of them, and really understanding who these men are, specifically Lincoln at this time, but understanding who Lincoln is going to help us understand ourselves that much better. And I think it will connect us to Idaho and our heritage, whether you've been here for 5 generations or whether you just got here. We should be proud Idahoans, like, just across the board.
And Angie, anyone can come?
Yes, everyone is welcome. We have quite a number of RSVPs so far, so we're expecting a rather large crowd, which just goes to show that there is active interest in the subject and the topic of Lincoln, and that's very exciting.
We've been speaking with Professor Justin Vipperman with the College of Southern Idaho and Angie Davis from the Idaho State Archives about his presentation Saturday at the Idaho State Archives in Boise about Lincoln and how slavery was abolished in America. We'll put some links on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. Thank you both for giving us a preview. We love it.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thanks for listening to Idaho Matters. Boise State Public Radio and Idaho Matters are members of the NPR network. It's an independent coalition of public media podcasters. You can find more shows in the network wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Samantha Wright. We'll see you tomorrow.
No matter what happens in Washington, the NPR Politics Podcast is here for you. For the latest news, insights, and analysis from the election and beyond, listen to the NPR Politics Podcast.